blessed evening, everyone. And it's quite rare to have this opportunity to meet for this type of meditative evening. And it is a chance that I encourage you to fully embrace, because not often do we have this possibility of shifting our attention to the very essence of our existence. The very secret of being. In daily life, we so easily get caught in the stream of events. Our precious awareness becomes trapped in events, mundane thoughts, feelings, certain dramas that characterize life. Perhaps from time to time we have some gap in which we can actually sit and meditate. But even that meditation may not be as focused, as dedicated, as timeless as it can be. So what we're doing when we're meeting here is that we truly pause, disrupt our daily mundane consciousness. We turn our awareness toward itself. Turn our perception toward itself. Turn ourself toward itself. Because if we don't know that awareness, if we don't know that self, if we don't know our perception, how do we expect to actually be able to understand life? We can get caught in events, but without deep understanding of what it is that we are doing and who it is that is doing. So the purpose of this evening is to help us deepen our meditative practice, our inquiry, encourage us to go deeper in case we are, and probably we are, on a certain spiritual journey. So this is our time to make sure that our meditation tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, our perception, our attention, they're as deep as they can be. But for this, we have to now gather all our consciousness, all our being together, to be concentrated, not in the usual sense of concentration. That is, there are two types of concentration. There is concentration as in mental strain. It's when we wrinkle our forehead. You see our foreheads. It's when we try to focus all of our attention on something to understand it. And that's one form of attention. But that's certainly not what we're doing here. Concentration here is gathering all our being and powers of awareness. To have this kind of state of heightened awareness and heightened presence. Anchored in the now. And then through that immense energy of our being, energy that is usually wasted on thinking, feeling, wanting, reacting, this energy, when it becomes concentrated, when it is not wasted at all, is the springboard for insight. If you have enough energy, you can have this direct contact with reality here and now. Even just by speaking about that, about this kind of heightened presence, it is already beginning to naturally dawn on us, because our attention is gradually redirected. We begin to take notice, to be aware of that which usually seems so obvious. The fact that we are present, the fact that we're aware. Two facts that seem so natural, and still these are the keys to transformation. So now we are going to meditate together. And I always say, when I start with meditation, that satsang, that this type of evening is meditation from the beginning to the end. There's no moment in which we're not meditating. It's not that we are sometimes talking and thinking and then we are meditating and then we are answering questions. So it's not about that. It's we're meditating, then we're meditating, and near the end we're once again meditating. Because meditation is not a state in which we're necessarily still, silent, closed-eyed, you see. It is a certain quality that can actually imbue our words, our thoughts, our conversation. So let us now close our eyes and as we're breathing slowly and deeply, and as we're letting our body and mind relax with every breath we take, connecting our mind and body with the slow and deep rhythm of our breathing. We'll now become as aware of as possible of what can be called our life force. Life force can be felt as a certain energy, a certain vibration, a certain sense of aliveness that is running through the subtle pathways of our body. Take away that life force, this vibration, and you only have an unanimated body, a physical substance but without life. It is only thanks to the presence of the life force that our bodies are animated, filled with life. So begin to get in touch with that vibration that is actually everywhere. The more you're aware of it, the stronger it becomes. So feel that vibration, sometimes like gentle streams and sometimes like gushing rivers, taking place in your legs, belly, chest, hands, brain. It is as if you're feeling life dancing inside your body. Like the flame of life. You can even play for a moment with this subtle sensation and try to visualize how you're removing the body, the physical substance, and just remaining with this kind of vibration, this dance. Of course, if that is possible for you. And now, begin to examine this kind of vibration. Is it really only inside your body? Of course, there may be some kind of slight distinction, but check if there is also this type of vibration around your body, above your head, around your torso, 1 meter away from you, in the room. So now, as much as possible, see if you can let go of that barrier, imaginary barrier separating your life force and the outer life force, as if they blend into one another. So that you're starting to feel the dance of life inside and outside. And in a sense, there is no longer inside and outside. There is just this vibration. Try to see if you can somehow merge your life force into the greater life force. As if there is now an ocean of life force, an ocean of dancing vibration. Your barriers are dissolving. And you can sense this vibration all around you, above you, and in every imaginable point in space and time. Now take this vibration that is all over, this kind of cosmic ocean, and let it pour into your body to make your body enhanced by this immense energy. Let it become enlivened by this energy, invigorated by this energy. And now for the rest of this evening, you don't have to close again the borders of the physical. You can keep that sense of open border, this sense of transparency. Since that is reality, your body shares this vibration and contains it for a while. Very good. So gradually you can open your eyes again. And of course, this meditation has a lot to do with what we're going to explore together this evening. And again, make sure that you remember the talk is a continuation of that meditation. It's not that we're shifting to a conceptual mindset, you see. What the talk in this kind of evening is not meant to add concepts, it's meant to dissolve concepts. So use it use it wisely. It's all about emptying the mind, not filling it with new information. So what we're going to speak about, to meditate on, is the topic of loneliness. We want to understand what loneliness is and what is the key to the dissolution, the ending of loneliness. And first of all, let's start with our immediate reality, because now we're sitting together, right? Each one in front of their computer, and we are communicating through a computer, right? Digitally, non-physically, non-locally. I'm here in Portugal, you are somewhere else, and the question is, are we feeling each other? You see, can we feel each other even when we are physically separated? We are physically very far away from one another, and all we have is this kind of digital reflection and audio. We cannot sit very close to one another and look into each other's eyes and so on and so on. So can we experience intimacy even in this kind of condition? And you see what is happening in the present decade. I mean, it's been a process for already several decades, but especially in the last few years, what is taking place is actually unprecedented in evolutionary terms, because for so many tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years, depending on when you begin to count, there was a very specific meaning to being together, right? Being together was that we sat together, we came together, and we were physically in deep interaction. Yes, then there were letters, phones, and so on and so on. But now it's something completely different, because here we are, not depending on location, and in a sense we're meant to discover a new togetherness, you see? A new, because it's probably impossible to return to that old togetherness. Of course, this doesn't mean that people cannot meet each other physically, but most of our lives is now taking place online. So we have to see if it is possible to experience a new type of togetherness. And I'm just starting by talking about this kind of challenge of loneliness in our age, because of course loneliness has always been there. It's not something new. Poets have written poems about loneliness, books were written about loneliness. We have plenty of discussion across the ages, but the problem of loneliness is actually spreading in the world, and to a certain degree it's really surprising, because we are all connected, globally, constantly, right? People all day long, they interact with one another, commenting on each other's posts and having all kinds of online conversations, playing games, video games together online. So in a sense, we are intensely together. But on the other hand, we are so extremely lonely. And the question is, how do we face this problem of loneliness? Because, you see, when we talk about how to do this, we have to somehow shatter the illusion that the ending of loneliness depends on finding the right people. We have this kind of expectation, fantasy. It's only about finding the right people. To find that someone or certain someones, some people that who will have a profound understanding of our being, someone who will be so extremely interested in us, in our inner world, someone who will genuinely listen to us and will read us like a book, all these things. And as soon as we will find this someone or these special people, our loneliness will be resolved, finally. So we're waiting. But the thing is that this is only a fantasy. And why is that a fantasy? This is because the one who understood us could always walk away one day, right? Okay, so I had this someone for several years now. This someone leaves me, perhaps even by physically dying. Or perhaps that person all of a sudden stops understanding us, you see? At a certain point, they look at us and they say, I don't understand you. All of a sudden, this kind of intimacy is dissolved. So, in this sense, it cannot be that the ending of our loneliness can take place through a certain someone, because that depends on a very changing reality. Or perhaps we believe that our loneliness is going to be resolved if we only came out of our houses and spent some time in good company, you see. Or if we had certain partners, which means if we surrounded ourselves with people. Because if we feel perhaps lonely at home, and this becomes an emotional burden, then we try to surround ourselves with people in parties, and laughing with other people, going to a bar, going to a restaurant, or whatever. But many of us know, right? Many of us know that it is possible to be lonely even when we're surrounded with many people, and even when we're surrounded with many people all the time. And I've heard from enough people who have partners, and I've read about enough people who have partners, that they can feel extremely lonely even while they have a lifelong partner in the house. They still sit with them on the same sofa and experience loneliness. So of course then they can blame it on the other. We're not experiencing enough intimacy, and that's why I'm experiencing this kind of loneliness. But that's not fair. No one is going to resolve the problem of loneliness for us. And why is that? It's because loneliness can only be truly resolved at the level of existence. Loneliness is an existential problem. It's not a social problem. Of course, there's no question. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that we're not. It's not wonderful to be with other people, to share with other people, to be intimate with others, with animals, with plants, and all this is wonderful. But I'm just saying this will not resolve our problem of loneliness. For loneliness to be resolved, we have to go very deeply to the roots of loneliness. Because you see, there is a certain state in which loneliness is no longer possible. Even if you're somewhere at the edge of a Himalayan mountain peak, you see, and there is not even a single soul around, or in the desert, and you cannot feel loneliness. On the other hand, you can be in a bustling city and feel extreme loneliness. So, when you begin to look into loneliness, you will realize that loneliness is rooted in isolation. That's what loneliness really is. First, there is isolation. Then there is loneliness. And this sense of isolation, that's why we started this evening with the meditation, you see, because we have this kind of also energetic isolation. Here are the barriers of my body, the barriers of my life force, and here is the outside dance of life, the dance of life. But really, this is an artificial distinction, you see. But when I am lonely, this is because I have isolated myself. It's because I have erected walls. I have surrounded myself with walls, my self-existence. So my loneliness starts in the way I perceive the world. Loneliness originates in a very fundamental, very a primordial state. It's the feeling, very feeling that there is a world out there, you see, a world out there filled with strangers. Here I am, and then there is a world out there, and the world is all of those beings over there outside me are strangers. And of course, when I have this kind of alienation, this kind of isolation, this is where my search begins. You see, the search for someone who is like me. Are you like me? Will you share with me my experience of life? Perhaps we have something in common, you see? And again, it's wonderful to find people who share with us their experiences, our experience of life. That's perfect. But again, it's not going to to help us uproot that isolation. You see, because of this isolation, I mean, if you think globally about human beings, because human beings, they live on a certain planet in an apparently empty universe. And then even human beings, they experience perhaps some kind of loneliness, right? Because they have this sense of us on this planet, and then there is that universe out there. And that is why perhaps sometimes humans have these hopes to meet aliens, and sometimes they are very afraid of meeting aliens. But it's this feeling of, is there anybody out there? Hello? You see? So in the very same way, we have this kind of sense of isolation. Now, of course, in our meditation, we realized, yes, there are certain borders, right? In the sense that the life energy is contained inside this body, and then there is life force outside the body. Why do I need to have this kind of temporary borders, you see? This is because through these borders, I'm able to have a subjective experience, right? I can have an experience. I can have me and the world, and that's practical. It's helpful, right? If I didn't have any borders whatsoever, then I would simply would be like one mass of energy without any possibility to experience anything. And still, essentially, this is a relative experience and temporary experience, this kind of state of having borders. It's just practical. But it doesn't change at all reality. As you practice in that meditation, we practiced, right? We started feeling, yes, there are borders, but the life force is actually, can you differentiate water from water? You see? If there is water in a glass, can you say that this water is different from the water in the sink? Of course not, right? It's the same water. So that is the very point. The glass is temporary and relative, but the water is the same water. That's reality. Now, of course, as long as we're so intensely focused on our individuality, we cannot hope for the ending of loneliness, because we are isolating ourselves constantly, right? And this is what we're doing nowadays. We're thinking of me as the center of the universe, and we're all day long focused on ourselves, and then unbelievably we experience loneliness. You see, this is because the more I choose to focus on myself as the center of the universe, the more I will experience the world out there filled with strangers. The borders will be very thick, you see, and the borders will be everything for me. So nowadays, everyone is so obsessed with me. My story, my traumas, my pain, my hopes, my wills, and so on and so on. But my individuality. And the world, our politics, our societies, our nations, everyone emphasizes so much the us and them, right? Us and them all the time. So we have constant enhancement of this kind of wall mentality. We're taught by our politicians, by our nationalities, by our communities to constantly label ourselves and others. So we mark the boundaries, you see. We strengthen the boundaries through identities and names and opinions. In short, we become so terribly obsessed with what distinguishes us from others, and that creates loneliness, you see. Now, of course, when I go out, I leave my house and I see people superficially, these people are foreigners, right? They are foreign to me. I don't know these people. I don't know them in the sense that, yes, I don't know their names, I don't know their history, I don't know their biography, I don't know their political opinions, I don't know their family and what they love to eat, right? So I don't know all these stuff that we use to emphasize our specialness. I like pasta, you like pizza, you see? So we are different. But intuitively, And that's the point. When you begin to have this kind of intuitive, penetrating look, you realize that these people, these animals, they're all familiar to you. You somehow strangely know them. They're not really foreigners. They're not really others. And that's actually the reason for our social embarrassment. Sometimes we think, oh, we're socially embarrassed because we think that people are someone else, and we need to impress them, and we need to, and they look at us in this way or other, so we're sure that otherness is the reason for our embarrassment. But this is only superficial. Our real social problem is that we are experiencing intimacy all the time, and that intimacy is actually too present, too extreme to bear, you see. It's just too much to contain. It's not too little. We don't have a lack of intimacy. We have excess. And that's why we actually escape to all kinds of social gestures, because it's we don't know what to do with it, or we resort to labeling, because this enables us to avoid this embarrassment of intimacy, because we know each other, you see. We know each other, and we have known each other since the beginning of time and before that. So what terrifies us, what embarrasses us, is this kind of profound familiarity. We don't know what to do with it. And this familiarity is something that we carry in us as memory, the most ancient memory of them all, deep inside our hearts. And also in some other centers, especially the crown of our head. You see, if you have this kind of recognition and you're starting to relax into it, you can never experience loneliness again. So what we remember, this ancient memory, is from the beginning of time. If we want to imagine the beginning of time using the theory of the Big Bang, you see, of all of us, like one concentrated mass of energy, you see, in all of us, in a deep embrace in this one concentrated, potent energy. Only later did we depart from one another, said goodbye, now I'm going to be someone, a different form for a while. So it's the very same energy in countless manifestations, and that is all. The water is the same water. It doesn't matter what the container is, because the container is relative and temporary. And we have a clue to that kind of interconnectedness, you see, that the fact that we're all open systems, we're not truly rigid, closed systems as our thinking makes us believe. The reality is that when we're walking on the street, we're all breathing and we're all inhaling and exhaling the very same air, right? It's like we are in one ecosystem that is constantly sharing the very same air that sustains us. So when you're beginning to reawaken this kind of heart memory, you're becoming able to feel at home wherever you go. You walk on the street and you feel this is home. Home is not your four walls apartment or house. It is everywhere. Home is existence. And we're completely permitted to feel that, this kind of familiarity, to breathe into it. Notice how I just now exhaled, now someone else inhaled, and we're like this kind of interconnected being, and we're sharing the same life force, and our boundaries are only temporary and relative. But for this to happen, of course, you have to prefer to experience this inner interconnectedness. You need to prefer to experience this wholeness, this totality, and to stop focusing all the time on differentiating yourself, labeling yourself and others, and centering on yourself, you see. Because it's a choice. I walk, I see people, and if I waste all my energy on just labeling them, saying this person, that person, they come from this nation, this is their religion, this is their political opinion, this is their particular form, they are female, they are male, they're whatever, then I'm wasting all my energy, and I'm ending up feeling so dreadfully isolated that I'm paying the most terrible price I could ever pay. because at the end of the day, I'm going to feel lonely. And I'm going to feel lonely because I feel isolated. And I feel isolated because I choose to isolate myself. Instead, see if you can look at people and instead of focusing on their form, recognize them from within, you see? Of course, you're not supposed to now embarrass people by being exceedingly intimate with them. Because they're not prepared for that. There's absolutely no reason. It's something that it's supposed to dissolve your own sense of isolation. So it starts in your perception, starts with your perception. Change that perception. Perhaps on the surface, you will still be silent and respectful toward people's boundaries. After all, we're all somehow supposed to pretend that we don't know each other. You see? That's the game. But if you look at these people from that ancient memory that is deep inside your heart, you will see that you're feeling at home wherever you go, and that you're seeing only familiar faces. It's everyone is like, oh, hello, haven't seen you since the Big Bang. Hello, how are you? So that ancient memory is far, far more real than superficial labeling and temporary changes of form and identity. Now I'm a Muslim, now I'm Jewish, now I'm Christian, now I'm Buddhist, now I'm American, now I'm German, now I'm Australian. Now I speak this language, and now I speak that language. But that is completely transient compared to that underlying reality, you see. So this is the secret we can call the secret of the One. What is the One? The One is this kind of essential familiarity, this kind of same water inside different vessels. And when we are beginning to have this kind of experience of the One, recognition of the One, this One implies complete aloneness. It means being completely alone, not lonely, but alone. But this aloneness is not just one side, you see, one opposite that is different from the sense of wholeness, of totality. So we have this kind of complete aloneness, and when we're completely alone, it's also being completely all-pervasive. Completely together, completely interconnected. Sometimes we're afraid of this kind of total aloneness, because if I realize that it's just one water, it's just one essence, this means that there's only one that exists. And that's a little terrifying, right? Because there's nothing else outside of it. But that's the beauty, because in this sense, the one is beyond alone and together. It's both and beyond, you see? So if you're completely alone, you're also completely together. That's the key. So all that means that the key to loneliness the key to the ending of loneliness is learning to be alone. Truly alone. But sometimes when people say learn to be alone, we have this kind of imagination. You know how it is. Teachers recommend learn to be alone. Learn to be. What does that mean? Learn to be alone with yourself, which means move away from the crowd, from the noisy world, and just be with yourself. Go into yourself. But that's not what we're talking about here. Because if you really, really learn to be alone, it means learning to be with that sense of existence that you share with all others. It's not learning to be with myself. It's learning to be with myself. You see, so this is how learning to be alone means putting an end to loneliness. And when we learn to practice meditation correctly, when we understand what meditation really means, what meditation is all about, we can put an end to loneliness. Meditation can put an end to loneliness. It's not about further withdrawal from the world. It's about dissolving our borders, and feeling how we're not separated from the rest of existence. So let's see if you have any questions. And as I said at the beginning, just as we meditated in our guided meditation, and just as we meditated in our talk, now we're going to meditate through whatever questions you may have. And if you don't have questions, we can always sit in silence. Okay, yes.
So there's a question from Linda. Linda, you can now turn your microphone on.
Yeah, there we go. There we go, Shai.
Hello.
Hello, Shai. Thank you for this beautiful teaching.
Thank you.
I know exactly what you're talking about. When I have sat with others in meditation, it's just a sense that we're all in the very same place, the very same state. And then after we become more individuated in the ways that you were describing. My question has to do with just looking at what's happening in the world now. I can understand all being one. I really do grasp what you're referring to, and it's a great reminder. But I have a really hard time if I think about someone like Putin. And then there are many others in that category where I don't feel any of that. I feel very alienated. And I'm horrified. So there's repulsion. And I know it's at an individual level, I suppose, but it makes it very hard to honestly incorporate those beings in the same way.
Yes, yes. Yes, that's actually a very significant question, Linda. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think that we are all challenged, right, by certain forms that seems to be promoting the so-called values of separation and division and oppression and violence and war and manipulation. And when we watch these beings, it's sometimes very tempting, and for very understandable reasons, it's very tempting to begin to divide the world into dark forces and bright forces, good forces, into the enemy and us, into the reasonable beings and them. So now the thing is that we need to go a little deeper, because when we do this, we actually fall into the very same trap, because if I try to remedy, or if I oppose someone who feeds on separation and division by creating another divided world, I actually, in a way, nourish this very same force. And I know that this is challenging because the appearance of the world is not just an illusion, you see. It is half illusion. And that's confusing, because it is transient, it's relative, it is going to change. So, but for a while it is real, and we cannot reject it. When we have someone like Hitler, there is no question about the fact that he represents the most extreme force of separation, and that opposes the deepest wishes of our hearts. So yes, on the surface, the world, of course, has opposition and has fierce forces and destructive forces. There is no question about it. We don't need to reject that reality. We only need to be able to see deeper than that reality, and to realize that more deeply than that, even though these beings separate, I'm not going to separate like they do. So this doesn't mean that you're starting to think, oh, Putin is actually a beautiful angelic being, or something silly like that. You're realistic, you're sober, you see, yes, this manifestation represents the strongest forces of separation and division on earth. that is not helpful, that is destructive. And still, I know that this kind of manifestation is a distorted, twisted manifestation of the very same water, the very same essence. And I'm not going to be deluded, be deceived by the appearance, and have my world divided as a result, you see? So I know that this requires some level of courage, because our hearts are offended by these kinds of representations and manifestations. And still we don't want to be a part of that same division and separation. So you, including Putin in your world of one, does not mean that you're endorsing what Putin does or what he represents. That's the point. And again, Putin here is just can be replaced with many other names, as you just said wisely. So thank you for that. That's an essential point, because I know that it's in the air. And you know that Linda, it's this is something that is not only out there represented by such strong forces, because it even starts with our own circles of people that we don't like so much. Sometimes people we are very critical of. And this is what is so remarkable about a certain meditation, a very known Buddhist meditation, loving kindness. In loving kindness, we learn to challenge our tendency to devote our loving kindness energy to just those beings we like or those beings we find harmless, because at a certain point we are somehow supposed to emanate loving kindness toward someone we really feel uncomfortable with or even consider our enemy. Now, to be able to do that, this is why that moment is the threshold. In that meditation, if you cross that threshold, if you manage to pass through that test, you will be able to attain true universal loving kindness, and not just the type of loving kindness that is still conditional, slightly conditional. Because when I say that I experience oneness, my oneness is not just with the clouds, the trees, the birds, and all the lovely creatures on earth, and the people I love. Oneness means oneness. It means that you cannot exclude anything and anyone, and if you do, that damages your own perception and weakens your own ancient memory. And we really need people who will have this undivided world, because they are sources of strength and courage in a world that superficially is eaten up by division. That's our first action. Yes, please.
Question from Christine.
Yes, Christine.
My question is, due to trauma, I often feel invisible in contact with others. If I give up boundaries even more, it feels dangerous for me, even though I want to feel connected. What can I do?
Again, please, the question. So, due to trauma, yes?
Due to trauma, I often feel invisible in contact with others. If I give up boundaries even more, it feels dangerous for me, even though I want to feel connected. What can I do?
Good. Yes, this is very important. So yes, we've all experienced all sorts of trauma, and sometimes severe traumas in relation to trusting people, letting them in, removing our boundaries, then becomes really scary, because we feel that we can be invaded once again, we can be robbed of our power, we can lose our self once again, and that's really dreadful. And then we resort to this kind of self-protection. We erect the walls and we learn to set the boundaries, right? Because sometimes our lesson is to learn to set boundaries, to learn to say no to certain energies, to learn to stand our ground. And that is very important. We shouldn't think that this evening is all about dissolving these boundaries altogether, and I don't know if and just leaving the house, the door to your house open and the windows, okay, everyone can enter, because that's no longer your house. It's everywhere is your home. That's one way. Some people do it. Some mystics have done that throughout the ages, but we don't. It doesn't mean that this needs to happen in practice. So, because first of all, there has to be some ability to maintain our individuality. So when you remind yourself of that, first of all, it's very important to work on the trauma as much as possible and as deeply as possible, to return to the trauma and to work on the conclusions. You see, because in every trauma, we form certain irrational conclusions about life, ourselves, others, and the world. Now, these conclusions, some of them are wise and reasonable. For instance, it is important to learn to say no. It is important to set boundaries. It is important to defend myself. This is reasonable. But if the conclusion is that it prevents me from allowing even this healing feeling, you see, because if we want to heal that trauma, it begins with the healing of our isolation. And this is not this healing of the isolation is not dangerous, because it doesn't oppose your need to set boundaries. It doesn't oppose you're saying no. It can coexist. So start even just a little to allow that to kiss your heart, you see, and to start healing that traumatic memory that enhanced the sense of isolation. remember, this is a part of the healing. It does not endanger your healing. It is a part of the healing. Now, one thing to remember, your heart, as everyone's heart in a trauma, becomes wounded, becomes in a way bruised. But your deeper heart, it's like your heart behind the heart, still carries that memory and has remained unbruised. It is undamaged, it is intact, it is still glowing. So even if I have a very deep wound, I still have that innermost heart in me. And through that innermost heart, I can reawaken that ancient memory. And through that awakening, I can begin to heal my bruised heart. I can let this healing energy that whispers to my bruised part, I'm at home. I'm always at home. This world is my home. It's not just that dangerous place. It can be a dangerous place, but in a transient and relative sense. But in an essential sense, this is home. So just let this healing begin. This does not oppose, or this does not go against healing the trauma specifically and setting boundaries. It coexists. It can take place. It can take place right now while you're still in the process of recovery. Yes.
Question from Konstantinos.
Yes, Konstantinos.
Dear Shai, after samadhi of oneness, I was able to say and feel to everything, matter, plants, and animals, I am this and that without any doubt. But with human beings, it was not the case. I felt the ego in us even more strongly. That separates us. What can you comment on this feeling and insight?
Interesting. First of all, you are blessed to be able to say that you've had this kind of samadhi, you've had this kind of consciousness. Now, it's very important to understand something very subtle here, Konstantinos. When we come out of samadhi, our awareness of the subtleties of ego becomes actually enhanced. Sometimes we think, well, now after I've come out of my samadhi, now I will feel this sense of oneness prevailing at any given moment. But actually what happens is that we become more sensitive. It is as if there is a pond, you see. If you take a stone and throw it into a gushing river, will the river be troubled by the stone? It's gushing, right? It's so noisy, everything is so crazy, so intense that one stone doesn't change a bit. But take a pond, a still lake, completely still, and take a stone and throw it into the water, and then you can sense the ripples, right? Why? Because your silent being actually becomes more sensitive to the subtleties of ego in you and in others. Now, this can be quite disturbing, right? Because you're really hoping with all your beautiful heart and good intention to now focus on what you've discovered. But with human beings, it's more challenging. Human beings are not like plants, right? I mean, look, can we see it? Yes? Look at this gorgeous being that I admire so much. So that's very easy to see its wholeness because it's an undivided being. Of course, it also has its own struggle for existence. It also wants to live. So, but scientists say that flowers have all these kinds of scents and shapes in order to be attractive. So they have a certain will, you can say. But it's not like humans. Humans have contradictions. Humans are not simple. They have different layers. They have different forces. They have separation and they have love. They have ego and they have softness. So you're beginning to notice all these. And you're also beginning to notice the ripples of your own ego more acutely. So first of all, accept that. One, accept that your sensitivity to ego actually increases, not decreases. Two, people are not plants. People are not animals because they have this kind of reflective self-consciousness that makes them be more complex but also more complicated. And when you accept that, these 2 points, despite your sensitivity, train your attention to look beneath the appearances. Now I know it's challenging, but if you can do it with an orchid, you can do it with, well, if we have it, you can do it even with Putin, you see. you can do it even with those who really seem to be ego-centered. And actually challenge yourself by putting yourself in these situations and confronting these individuals, because if you can find it in them, you will be able to establish your unity consciousness. And make sure that you also see it in yourself, even when your ego is troubling you and distorting your own manifestation. Can you see it in you even when you are away from your true self, apparently? So that's the practice. So yes, I think we're after Samadhi, we're given the opportunity to at first perhaps we look at the clouds and we think, oh, I'm so one with the clouds, and we look at the grass, I'm so one with the grass and with the insects and with the birds and with the ocean and with the rocks, and then somebody comes somebody is approaching us, and oh, that's more complicated. It's complicated to us because our own ego is immediately triggered, and it's complicated to be able to penetrate their appearance and find out that water is water. But this is where the challenge lies, and this is where the missing piece of unity consciousness is found.
There's a sharing from Dorothea.
Yes, Dorothea.
So wonderfully explained by you how the healing path works. I know to this day how it felt to love my father as a child despite his violence. And there's a quote, where is home if not in the heart?
Yes, we all know that heart and home are actually synonymous, right? Because it's and that's the deepest spiritual secret, the deepest mystical secret is that this sense of home is found in the heart. And you say, yes, I could experience this with my father. My father was violent, and I was able to see through that violence. I was able to experience that connectedness. This violence was painful and perhaps terrifying and perhaps traumatizing, and still it didn't isolate me. This is what you're actually saying. Because when I say love, I still love that person. This means I'm not isolated from that person. I still keep a sense of open border. So yes, I can still love the world as myself, even if the appearance seems to only encourage me to isolate myself. My heart doesn't have to tremble in the face of appearances. And I know it's not easy, again, because sometimes appearances seem to be everything, or all we have, you see. But appearances are nothing compared to what our heart knows and experiences. So now, let's take a moment of silence. I'm so deeply grateful for our sharing tonight, or today, depending on where you are right now. It's been such a joy to delve with you into this essence of existence. And I hope that you're going to carry the seeds of this exploration inside your heart and let these seeds germinate and until they become a full recognition, even in the midst of an apparently chaotic world. Thank you so much, and goodbye.